Hi, Mark. It's so nice to have you on this podcast today. Thank you so much for making the time. This is a personal venture for me. All the opinions and questions I ask are of my own and not of my company, UKG. But I wanted to spend time with you. We've known each other for a long time, and you're a very well known serial entrepreneur here in the Atlanta area. You're currently in charge of two companies, Relotech and NerdRabbit. And specifically today, we want to focus on your company, NerdRabbit, because that is going through an incredible transformation with the new generative AI tools. So tell us about the things you're doing.
Well, first of all, Vicky, thanks for inviting me. And my opinions are my own as well, although probably a lot of people at NerdRabbit would agree. Um, but NerdRabbit was kind of a spin out of a previous company I started, which was called Relish Cloud. Relish Cloud was a premier AWS partner. And the challenge the, the whole reason NerdRabbit came about is companies were challenged with hiring great AWS talent, either full time people or contractors. They were very hard to find. It was a very tight labor market at the time. And for these kind of skill sets, it still is. And we created NerdRabbit to match companies that were hiring with people that had those skills. We call them our nerds, right? And those nerds might be full time. Companies might want a full time person. They might want a long term contract, or they might want somebody for as short a period as 1 hour. And we allow that on our platform. So if you wanted to find somebody to talk to for an hour about the best AWS database service that they could use, and they want to migrate off Oracle, for example, we probably have a nerd on our platform that knows that very well that they could hire for 1 hour. So yeah, that's what we built at NerdRabbit, this platform to do this. And then Gen AI, hit the scenes a few months ago, and we started really thinking, wow, this could absolutely not only change our business, but it could be a technology that helps us help all of our customers to hire faster and hire better. And so we're really excited about what this could mean in the whole HR industry and for NerdRabbit in particular.
Yeah, and it's a really great way to focus on, like you mentioned, the low task and effort work, like the 2 hours versus the full-time 3-year assignment, and the quality of the candidates as well as the amount of work that goes into recruiting someone for those jobs should be different, and that's where you come in, right, with generative AI.
Right, right. No, it's a really good point that anyone who has looked for a new job or anyone who has hired or has tried to hire someone for a job in the last 20 years, even, and that's probably everybody, right, has either looked for a job or tried to hire someone, understands that, there's a lot of steps involved and it's very cumbersome. And despite all the technology we have, it seems like it's become more cumbersome.
Yes.
I think Gen AI can change all that. And it's become cumbersome in a lot of ways. If you look at, from a candidate's perspective, they have to create a resume, they do a cover letter, they sometimes then have to fill out an application, they might have multiple tests that they have to do. Then they have multiple rounds of interviews with other people and drug tests and screenings and all this kind of stuff. Um, and if you just get on LinkedIn and read comments, then they'll say, "I got ghosted by this hiring manager. I thought I was a great or I never heard back. It's so frustrating. I wish companies would tell me faster." And um, I've applied to just do a search on LinkedIn for people that have applied for more than 100 jobs. There's tons of them.
Yeah.
I've applied for 500 jobs and I've only gotten two answers. What's going on? The same frustrations on the other side. From a hiring manager, they get the average job I read, gets like 118 candidates, and they want to try to find the best one.
Right.
And then there's other research that I had in my most recent blog that shows this is kind of sobering. The best candidate out of your 118 is gone in 10 days. So
Get on it fast. Figure out
get
who the
on
best
it
candidate
fast.
is.
The good one is the best one of the bunch is gone in 10 days. And the process is very cumbersome because who who has time to do it? Because you have your job is not to hire. Your job, you're running some department, and now you have to look at 118 resumes and figure out, well, who do I want to interview? And then you have to get them to scheduled, and then the opposite happens. Candidates that applied suddenly ghost you. They're not interested, or um, then it's so subjective, and there's bias built into every hiring process. And we briefly chatted about this before, but
Yeah.
I think everybody has some sort of unconscious bias. Um, it might
It's
be
human, right? We're humans, so it's okay.
it's human. Yeah,
Yeah.
you might think that because I'm wearing glasses, I'm smart. It's actually just because I can't see very well. So, but everybody has some bias built in, and so how do you handle all that from all the process involved and interviewing the right number of people in the right amount of time that hopefully you can make a decision in 10 days? It's very challenging. Gen AI has the opportunity to take a lot of that busy work off the table. And my personal opinion is that some people think that AI dehumanizes HR, that, oh, we're all going to be managed by computers and hired by computers and interviewed by computers and screened by computers. And although I actually believe that's true, a lot of those things, I think it has the opportunity to make HR more human. Because if you're a hiring manager that has to go through hundreds of resumes and then do all this scheduling, and how much time do you end up having to spend with the best candidates? Not very much. If you could use AI to quickly screen through those, to maybe implement or automatically generate a chatbot to make sure they actually are interested, maybe to figure out when they're available for an interview, maybe see where they live and what they're tell them what the salary is for the job and make sure it's still in, that they're still interested, answer all their benefits questions in the chatbot instead of during an interview. Then you can narrow it down to a couple of candidates where you can really spend some quality time and make sure that you hire the best candidate. So that's kind of what I'm thinking will happen with Gen AI and what I'm excited about with NerdRabbit. Because you asked a question early and I went off the rails a little.
No,
Sorry
it's
about
great. It's
that.
perfect.
Yeah, but you talked about a long term, like if we were hiring a full time person or somebody for a short, engagement.
Right.
On the NerdRabbit platform, we actually allow people to hire our nerds, as we call them, for projects as short as 1 hour.
Yeah.
And the process of screening and interviewing people takes 20 hours. So
You're losing money on your 1 hour assignments there. Yeah, that makes sense.
the business model doesn't make a whole lot of sense
No.
for customers or for us or even for the nerd themselves, because there's just so much work in figuring out who's available. Do they have the skill
Yeah.
set? Are they able to do the work? Does the customer like them? All those kind of things. And we think that we can use Gen AI to quickly find the right candidate. And as I talked about through chatbot, make sure that they're available for the work when it's needed to be done. They have the skill set. The customer agrees they have the skill set. No need to go through a bunch of interviews. They can start tomorrow.
Right. You could even send them a reminder, right, to attend the interview or whatever it is, sync their calendars.
Well, the
Anything.
interview isn't even an interview, it's a chat, which can happen. And that's the beauty of it. It can happen at any time. If they want, well, I'm at work. I can't do an interview right now. Well, you can do it at midnight. Launch the bot and it'll ask the questions, about what I just said. Here's the deal. We need somebody for 2 hours to, for example, set up an AWS environment for a new business that, wants to move from an on-prem environment. So you could fire up that chat at any time. And the promise, to me anyway, you hear a lot of cautionary tales about that AI is biased, but I think it's less biased. And I think it could do an interview in a very unbiased fashion about asking, do you have experience in AWS?
Yeah.
And the beauty is it can also ask that question in any language. Like if you say, "Well, I want to be interviewed in Spanish because
Right.
that's my native language.
Yeah.
I speak English, but I'd rather answer in Spanish." No problem.
Or if you have a foreign language requirement or something like that, that can be quickly tested as well. Um, but I
Absolutely.
also, as you were mentioning bias, what kind of rang in my head was when we interview candidates, it's very hard to objectively compare them, right? Like someone maybe resonated with us more because we're more like them. Or in other cases, they're more technical, but it just wasn't the right personality match. And so we're kind of judging them based on that. So if you have a chatbot and you have a record in terms of data with comparing answers, kind of one by one, you could have analytics around that to say, okay, we've had a chat with 20 candidates. Here's the outcome of that chat. They're all kind of, here's the bell curve of where the answers are, and these
Yep.
are the exceptional ones. So you can see how you can really run a more objective, maybe, interview process versus kind of this gut feeling that you end up with many times after the interviews.
Ha- Vicky, have you read our roadmap for development? Because I'm
Not.
just joking. I know you haven't, but that's exactly what we want to do. Uh, and we think that a chatbot answering the same kind of questions, but answering in the style that they want it. Like I want you to, if you wanted our a chatbot to ask the questions, as if it was Queen Elizabeth or Snoop Dogg or whatever, it can do that. And I think that's really cool about it because then you just get objective answers
Yeah.
asked in the language or style that the person likes to chat in. Um, as you said, then you can compare using AI who's the best candidate or who are the best two candidates.
Right.
And then you can
And
decide.
really help with the diversity and inclusion, right, aspect of things. So you're being much more objective, right? Oh, I don't like this person because they talk like Snoop Dogg will not be an excuse, right? For not hiring.
Right, exactly.
Something like that.
Personally, I would love to hire someone that talks like Snoop Dogg, but
Yeah.
I've never met one yet that quite has his style. But
Yeah.
you get the point, though, that yeah, it can meet you when you want to meet, and it can ask questions in the style that you want it to ask, and then you can compare those candidates very objectively.
Yeah.
I think that's the killer app for HR anyway, and I think AI has the potential to transform a lot of industries. HR is just one example with a lot of companies. Think about companies that hire thousands of people a day. Fast food restaurants, for example. How much? And they're already using versions of AI for hiring, but with Gen AI, they have the ability to even be more efficient. But there's other stuff besides HR, of course, that I think Gen AI is going to disrupt.
What those industries are, I'd love to know.
Well, this, of course, is my opinion. So, and I don't think anybody knows the future. And politicians and lawmakers may decide where AI can be used and where it can't. But there's just so much opportunity for certain fields that you think about. So think about the use case I described, which is someone applying for a job.
Right.
Well, that same use case is very similar to applying for other stuff. And, like you mentioned, like applying for a driver's license. How
Yeah.
about that one? Um, Applying for any kind of license or grant, or you want to, here's a good example. Um, if you've bought a house recently, if you've done a mortgage, all the kind of paperwork involved in that.
It's pages of signing for hours.
Yes. And you're
Yeah.
paying a lawyer to draft all that, which is
Right.
basically, oh, my lawyer friends are not going to like this comment, but it's cut and paste. You know,
Right. Yeah.
they have they have this document that, here's a standard land sale agreement. Let's, most of the paragraphs are all the same.
Right.
Gen AI could do a really good job of doing that really fast and really cheap. So anything like that where there's a lot of cumbersome paperwork involved, and law is one example of that. Another example, maybe it's not a paperwork example, but I think the what I'm super excited about is Gen AI for customer service. I
Mm.
hate I I'm just super impatient. I
Yeah.
hate calling customer service at any company. I just hate it. First of
Yeah.
all, you get
I believe you. I'm the same way. Sometimes it's hours. I know at Delta I had to like stay on for hours.
it's so
That's
painful.
fun.
First, you
Yeah.
go through the phone,
Yeah.
hit one if you want to return, hit two, blah blah blah, and then you have to uh, type in your order number, your customer number, and then you finally end up talking to someone 10 minutes later, and
Yeah.
usually they're very hard to understand, or then my phone dies in the middle of the conversation, my cell phone, oh, I forgot to charge it, or whatever happens. So
Right.
it is just painful. And then oftentimes the person says, I need to escalate this to my manager. I'm not really sure about your question. Oh God, and then you have to start all over and explain it again to the manager, the
Right.
whole problem you're having. And God, Gen AI can change all of that
I,
and give you, again, what the beauty of it, it can talk in the language that you want it to talk,
right.
the style you want it to talk, and it can have answers instantly to any of your questions. And I think that's going to be a killer app for anyone who has some sort of call center, customer service department, where you're calling people to get answers on stuff that they have to look up. Gen AI can look it up instantly.
Yeah.
So it's
It's huge. I remember doing a big migration as part of Earthlink, and we had to move a bunch of mail data from one data center to the next. And we would have an outage about 4 hours overnight, and it was a huge deal. We went through huge communication over communication, and then our call center staff were super stressed about the volume of calls because every a call at the time cost $2. That was like, so they're like, if we're gonna have 1,000 calls, we need to know how to staff this. There were so many considerations into like this outage overnight. And if you have a chatbot, right, and you know how it scales, and it just makes things so much, it makes that conversation a lot easier, right? For taking that risk as a business, you can kind of build in a little bit of cost savings in case you do have, a high call volume that happens.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, we are rapidly figuring out how we can use Gen AI not only for our own business but for our customers across all these different industries, from insurance to financial to retail. I think there's going to be massive disruption. Field service, any manufacturer is installing anything. You have people out in the field that they need access to data.
Right.
Uh, all that can be revolutionized with Gen AI. I don't know why I just thought of this, but one interesting thing I think about Gen AI is the a lot of the jobs that I think people are concerned about that it might eliminate. I'm not sure it eliminates them, it just changes them. But most of those jobs are unlike other technologies that have hit
Mm.
the scene over the last 100 years. The jobs that seem like most at risk are fairly high paid knowledge worker kind of jobs.
Right.
The jobs that probably aren't affected at all are your average blue collar job. Someone who is working on an assembly line making cars, that job isn't really affected. But somebody who is in charge of researching through lots of manuals or case history or IP patents or whatever that might be, Gen AI has the potential to radically change how a knowledge worker gets information.
Yeah. And content marketing, right? Like the aspect of creativity always comes into play, right? Because we're dealing with images and content, written content. And you mentioned yourself that you created a song for your all hands recently based on your agenda, right? Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, that's a very creative
Yeah.
aspect of Gen AI.
Well, I think that a great way for anyone to figure out what is Gen AI is to go on to the OpenAI platform, sign up for Chat GPT or sign up for Dolly, and there's 20 different versions of this, by the way, so you don't have to go with the OpenAI version. Uh, there's 20 different ones, and they're all similar, but they're all different too. And start experimenting with it. Ask it to write a poem about your dog. Ask it to write a cover letter for your resume. Ask them, say, I want to be on Vicky's podcast next. Can write her an email on why I'd be a great person for her podcast. All that kind of stuff. It does a remarkably good job. So to kind give our employees an idea of what is Gen AI and what does it do. At our all hands meeting 3 months ago, I had our agenda, which was 20 some items that were all very company specific, and I cut and pasted into the Chat GPT, and I said, write a song in the style of Queen, We Are the Champions, using our entire agenda. And within seconds, it has a whole song. I actually then had one of our sales reps sing it. it was it was remarkably good, and it rhymed. And I was thinking, how long would it have taken me to write a song with our agenda in the style of "We Are the Champion"? It would have taken me a week, and it did it in a couple days.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can even do that. A lot of us can't, even think to write a song. It's, I agree, the creativity. So I have a LinkedIn newsletter where I will publish this video cast. And I used to do my own painting for butterflies because initially the letter was called Butterfly Effect. And then I figured out I could just use Midjourney to create the images that had to do with the actual topic of the whatever I was writing or speaking about. And the quality of those images and the creativity around them always fascinated me because depending on me changing the word, it would create completely something different. So became more of almost a curation kind of project than a creativity project.
Yeah, I've been playing with multiple AI products, Midjourney being one of them. It's that one I just play with, and the images that it creates, it's fascinating. It's
It
similar
is.
to the Dolly one I mentioned, or Jasper is another one. But pick one and try it out. It's really fascinating how it works. And I say fascinating how it works. I have no idea how it works.
Well, that's what we're here all to learn, right?
I don't, and I'm not sure it matters that you know exactly how it works. It's very complex.
Very
These
complex.
models are
Yeah.
trained on billions of words and images, and I get that part. How all the algorithms work under the scenes, behind the curtain, um, that I'm not super clear on. It's almost like and we talked about this earlier. It's like it's a technology that seems almost magical.
Yeah.
You have this black box. You ask it a question, and it's not like it's spitting out the answer, right? It's not like a dictionary. It's creating something new every time. That is it's really quite fascinating to me.
And the value of the questions, right? Of how you ask the questions and the answers that are generated. So the better we get at asking specific questions, we get more valuable, hopefully, output that's accurate and not a hallucination of AI itself. But
For sure. In
um,
fact, there's all these new job titles that you're seeing now that
yeah,
12 months ago, if a job had been posted for a prompt engineer, I would
yeah,
have thought,
exactly.
what the heck is that?
Yeah,
Prompt engineer. Um, but now if you Google that and you look for companies hiring prompt engineers, it's probably a lot of them. Trying to figure out how do you engineer these chatbots and AI models to produce the results that you want them to produce, right? And it's pretty fascinating. And like all these disruptive technologies, some jobs will be changed and eliminated, but whole new types of jobs will be created, like prompt engineers, like we
yeah.
just described. So if you
A
want
hun-
to how do you get butterflies in your picture? What's the right kind of prompt? All that kind of stuff. If you understand the models a little bit, it's
It
you're
makes it, yeah, it makes it easier, and you can, but a lot of it, honestly, it has to do with how you ask questions. So, questions are part of just how we communicate, and I think that's the power of generative AI, is that you don't have to be an engineer to talk to the machine. You use language, right? And everybody has access to language, whatever language that is, and can ask questions. So now we kind of democratize this whole way of interacting with machines. Whether before you had to be like super technical person who understood how to, run code and machine learning. Now the machine can, you can tell machine to code something for you. I was looking at Conmigo. It's a generative AI, essentially chatbot for learning as part of Khan Academy, and they gave an example of a code sample that had a loop in it. And I just remembered my days from computer science where I would sit for 3 hours looking at my code, not figuring out that I had, a loop happening and where was it failing. I had no idea. And here it is. Conmigo can tell you in seconds where your code has a bug in it without you sitting there for hours. So I think, like you said, the potential is amazing in terms of every one of us can now interact with a machine in a way that's accessible.
yeah. You said something that was on my mind earlier, and you described it a lot better than I did, which is democratizing knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was describing, in that I think that's what the power of Gen AI does, which is why it's going to affect these knowledge workers more than others,
Mhm.
because these knowledge workers have had, the power has been in having the knowledge, right?
Right.
And these AI platforms democratize the access to writing a contract, writing a great resume, right? Um, writing summarizing a novel, whatever it might be, it's right there at your fingertips, which I think is incredibly exciting. And there's going to be massive changes because of it, in my opinion. And the next 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to see a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I think we're just in such a unique time in history where we can see incredible amount of change in terms of technology. and the speed with which it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like the dawn of the internet again, in some ways.
Exactly.
It's
It is. It
the
really is. And I
internet.
think it'll be even bigger. It'll be even bigger because of that democratizing aspect of it, that it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be available to everyone.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today, Mark. This was a fascinating discussion. I really, really appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.
Well, look, we should schedule something for 2 years, and we'll see if any of my predictions were right.
Oh, let's do it. We'll put it on the schedule today.
All right. Thank you, Vicky. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.